Yeah, he doesn't have it on yet. Lights are back on.
Okay, we're on. Okay. All right, that was a struggle. All right, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year coming up. I would like to welcome our state delegation, our members. We have two of our senators, I guess both of our senators, and we have four of our representatives, which is a great turnout. We have Representative Nardolillo present, Senator Raptakis, Representative Serpa, Senator Nick Kettle, Representative Chippendale, and Representative Nunes present. One thing, we got an email from Representative Roberts, which came to Town Manager Waters, which she asked to be read tonight, so I will do that to start off with. Thank you for the invitation to the meeting. However, I regret to inform you that I've had both a death and a birthday within the family to deal with at this time. Additionally, I have already requested the annual meeting to be scheduled for a more convenient time as opposed to within 1 week of Christmas, being the most challenging time of the year. As such, I will not be able to make tonight's meeting. I would really appreciate it if you would please consider rescheduling the annual meeting during the slowest time of the legislative year, which is January. I knew the slowest time probably would be all months outside of June, but that's only an inside joke. So read, and she would be here otherwise, and I haven't heard from Representative Morgan, but 6 out of 8 ain't bad, as they say. So, welcome our delegation. Welcome again our school committee, Mrs. Patnode, and also the town council. And as the legislative matters, we have an agenda to discuss. We have number 1 listed, discussion on state aid for Coventry schools, which of course proposed by the Coventry School Committee. So Mr. Levis or Mrs. Patnode, if turn it over to you to start off with legislative matter 1, please.
Sure, thank you, and we appreciate you, our legislators being here tonight, and I appreciate having an audience also. Like I said, it's nice to talk about, just to have faces and people to listen to these conversations, because a lot of times we have these conversations amongst ourselves, but it's the community that this really impacts. So this is more of a dialogue, but we know that over the last 7 years, the state had identified Coventry as being one of the districts that was underfunded in terms of the state aid. So over the course of 7 years, we received approximately 700, 800, close to 900,000 some years. With this year was supposed to be the last year of the implementation of the funding formula. We knew after that we would be level funded. What happened to us last year was, as they moved towards more full implementation of the funding formula, somewhere in April, and this is well into our budget process, we had been notified that we were receiving a reduction in state aid of about $533,000. And that had to do specifically with our free and reduced lunch population, a decrease. We received this year projections from the state, which had us projected level funding for the next 5 years? 5 years. And then 2 weeks later, we received numbers from the state that said, in FY19, we're going to be reduced another $715,000. But this wasn't due to population numbers. This was based on looking at the ability for Coventry to pay. And so what the state has done is, in adjusting the formula, they've looked at Coventry having a greater ability to pay, and therefore reducing the state share of funding. And I guess our question is, based on this, as Sarah said before, just using live data, that this funding formula, it seems to be very volatile, especially the way we do budgets. And, you know, many people have said, well, you have to budget very conservatively. But we heard from the town that just to cover basics this year is about $700 and some odd thousand. So I guess what we're looking at is there any thought in terms of revisiting the funding formula, or at least having a smoothing out? I know Senator Rep. Dacus, you had brought up several times we spoke about some form of like a maintenance of effort on the state side, because it's very difficult for us to budget, not knowing you know, when they'll adjust property values, when they'll look at the income and use that to adjust. So again, we were one of the, you know, we've lost over $1.25, $1.3 million in state aid over 2 years. So last year, instead of getting an $800,000 increase, we received about a $300,000 increase. And again, we know we'll probably have cuts in federal aid, but we don't know what those cuts will be. You know, a lot of it has to do, as you know, they give the money to the state, and then how the state will allocate that. So, but last year we received a $238,000 cut. So we found that it's very, very challenging, and just looking for some support and some ideas from you about how we should move forward and approach this.
Well, basically, Mr. Superintendent, in the past years, I've introduced with my colleagues legislation that is called hold harmless provision, meaning at the end of the budget year, if the town of Coventry, say, received $30 million, that the following year, if we can enact this legislation into law, you would not receive less than $30 million. And I think that is just not only a benefit for Coventry, but I think for all the school districts around the state. The issue is getting it passed. Again, there could be a cost toward the state, because if the state, like you said, Coventry received, I think it was around $825,000 more than the previous year. This year, even though that $800,000 above and beyond was reduced down to about $329,000, it's still technically a loss of $500,000. But if that bill was enacted into law, there would be probably, you would receive that same amount of money plus that $800,000, so the state could not either roll back or make a reduction, regardless of the issues of low to moderate income. I think was the school lunches. There were some formulas involved where the reduction took place. But again, if I'm going to put the bill in on the Senate side, and I believe my colleagues in the House would do the same. But the issue here is trying to get the bill passed statewide, which makes a lot of sense for everyone.
Can I say something on that? It does make sense, because we are forced as a council to use it, we're making an effort, and we can't reduce any payments to our school committee, you know, our school department at any time. So it really does make sense, and it would help us a lot if we could guarantee that money every year. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments regarding number one? Representative Nunes.
Yeah, Mr. Levis, I'm just trying to understand exactly what the cut was last year. You said there was $533,000 loss in the free and reduced lunch population. Was that due to a decrease in enrollment of those students? Or what caused that
Right.
decrease?
There's a formula calculation, so they identified that we had 150 less free and reduced lunch students.
Okay, so it wasn't really a cut from the state. It was that the students were no longer going to school at Coventry, so the money that you realized from that reimbursement was not fully realized.
So yeah, it doesn't have to do with the students weren't going to Coventry, but they might have qualified for free and reduced lunch. We were concerned because of the whole UHIP piece too. We're still concerned about that. We're not sure. We've had to go in families that have been eligible for free and reduced lunch last year, but they may not be eligible this year because it, you know,
Could be an error.
an error. So we've had to have those families, we've had to almost target those families and say, please fill out our free and reduced lunch form.
Right.
So we spent a lot of time looking at the data last year, but it shows the timing of that. So for instance, we start the budget process in October, November, at early November. By the time they use data, the state uses data on March 15th. So we spend a lot of time daily looking at our data to make sure that our data is accurate. So by March 15th, that is that's the cutoff point where they look at that data and they apply that data to all the funding formulas. So last year, that was a big part of it. However, moving forward, one of the major issue is that the state is saying that Coventry's ability to pay is greater. That's what the state is saying, so that the formula has been reduced. So they're saying that the town of Coventry needs to pay more and the state's going to pay less. And so my question is, I guess there's a couple questions there. One is just how the formula is applied. We do, they use a date of March 15th. That's awful late for us in terms of the budget process. Last year was April when we found out what the cut was going to be, and we had already come before the town and asked for a budget to be approved. We'd submitted our budget. This year now they're saying, well, Coventry's ability to pay is greater. And so another part is that, do you as the representatives agree, and are you going to help us in terms of promoting that Coventry, the community, based on the funding formula, their ability to pay should be greater? Because that's what the funding formula says, that property values have gone up, income has gone up, and therefore the state share is less. So there's a lot of variables to this, and just I look at it as so volatile. I think the intent of this formula was great. It was really looking at a community and population, but the way it's applied, it can change from year to year. How do we prepare for that? And it's easy to say, well, just be very conservative, but it's very, very hard. We have students with incredible needs. We've had a large population of students with special needs moved to Coventry, and I think because of the quality of our programs, which is great, but it's also, we don't budget for that. So it's very challenging the way the system is in place now. And so we're looking for some guidance, some support around working with the funding formula. That's why even the smoothing out process, it took us 7 years when they said we were underfunded by about $5 million. It took us 7 years to get up to a certain part, a level. And now within 2 years, we've been cut $1.3 million.
Mr. Levis, may I interject for 1 second? Mr. Levis, may I?
Sure.
Ms. Ignorelli, the average income, according to that, is how much? Because I think you'll find this very interesting, Representative Williams and Representative Serpa. This is what the state says our median income is in our communities.
Right, and I just want to flip to that page. I did hand out a packet of additional information, and Ed, I don't know if you want to pull up the slides for the rest of the community, and I can take that mouse back for you. But if I may, before I get to you, Mr. Florio, I just want to back up a little bit and address some of the points that you raised as well. So just to go back, for FY18, we were originally projected to receive $800,000 in additional state aid. In April, that cut came in as a result of our March 15th data that showed the decrease in the student population. So we did receive an additional $300,000 in revenue. It was just $500,000 less than we had expected for FY18. For FY19, and it's a little bit gray, or it's a little fuzzy, but on this screen that you can see in your packets, it's a historical state education aid and local aid. For FY19, they're using the same exact student enrollment as FY18, and that's important to point out, because typically we say, oh, if your state aid's going down, it's because your enrollment is going down, and that does happen. Thank you. But for the projections for FY19, you'll see that they're using the same average daily membership and free and reduced price lunch of 4,619 and 1,362. That hasn't changed from FY18, yet we're showing a real, true decrease of 700,000. So this isn't like last year where we thought we were going to get 800,000 and now we're only getting 100,000. We're truly being cut 700,000 this year from where our base was. And that's assuming population stays the same.
Can I just interject there for 1
Yes.
second? And you guys have verified that the population or the enrollment is, obviously enrollment hasn't gone down that much. You're just talking about the difference in students that qualify for the free and reduced lunch?
That was last year.
That was last year, but yes, one of the things that we did find out, and we are actually tackling that this year, we found out because of the issues with the U of state system at the state level, we have been told that anybody who was on direct certified, usually those are no-brainers for us. If they come in as direct cert, they're automatically qualified. There's a 3 to 6 month time lag with those applications being processed. So now what we're doing is we're looking at all of our direct certs from 2 years ago, comparing it now. Anybody who's not on that list, they're getting an individual letter from us saying, please complete this free and reduced price lunch application so that we can count it. I can't say for certain because I was not here at that time whether or not that March 15th data had students that were truly missing from that free and reduced price lunch population because of issues with the collection of that data.
There's no reimbursement for that.
There's no reimbursement. We will be holding off on signing that March 15th student enrollment data this year until we're 100% certain on it, because once that's signed, that's the information that RIDE will roll with. And RIDE actually did indicate that even if there is a delay in this information for the direct certs, they have to go with whatever information is in the system as of March 15th. That's why we're going to basically take the burden on ourselves to do everything we can to capture those. And then if I can just touch base on Mr. Florio's question, a few more pages in, let's see.
There's no waiver process, they get a little more time on that March 15th date?
No, that's pretty much hard and fast because they need to finalize their budget for the state. So whatever those numbers come in, is where we'll be.
Sarah, is there a portion of that population that maybe, is embarrassed because they don't want to ask for that free and reduced lunch? Is that, and they're not being counted also?
That would be consistent though, I think, like, we don't feel that that's the biggest part. I think the biggest issue this year is, if you look, it's the property values and the income has changed at the state's share. Last year was 48.7%. I mean, for this year, for FY18, for FY19, it's projected at, it's 45.9%, and that's not going to change. That has nothing to do with.
And I understand that, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that, they're saying that our salaries have gone up, but there's still, I mean, we probably still have a portion of people that don't even go after that.
Right. And
that could qualify, so, they're not even counting that, and,
correct.
How can they say that, oh, our salaries have gone up, and, we have free and reduced lunch is going down, when, there's so many factors involved there.
Right. Unfortunately, they do have to go off of data. So what we do as a district is our principals are very good about sending out requests. Even now, switching into the winter season, we have a lot of families who may have changes in their income status, whether they were landscapers or seasonal employees. So we make sure that we send out additional notifications to say, you might want to complete this form. There's no harm in completing it. You can complete it as many times as you want throughout the year. And as soon as that status is registered as free or reduced price lunch, that does get retroactive to back to the beginning of the year, so it has a positive effect for our whole average daily membership. Just getting back to Mr. Florio, in your packet that has additional information, the equalized weighted assessment value. So there's two parts, the equalized weighted assessment value of the properties, Coventry compared to the state, and then the median family income, Coventry compared to the state. So I just put a little summary in here, going back from 2011 to 2015 on the EWAV. 2015 is what they're using for the 2019 budget year. And if you look in 2011, Coventry as a percent was 2.8. Now it's 3.0. So that just shows you that our property values compared to the rest of the state are trending higher and are increasing, which is having a negative effect on the state share. And then below that, the median family income in Rhode Island is $74,000. The median family income in Coventry is $88,000, which is a 19.6% change. Again, that factor plays into the funding formula. So even though we have a no projection of a change in our student enrollment as of right now, the factors that are hitting us are the median family income, and the EWAV is negatively impacting our calculation.
Sarah, what was the median family income one more time?
In Rhode Island,
88, no, in Coventry.
in Coventry is $88,556.
Okay, how many people in this room make
Doesn't matter.
$88,500?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. How many people in your district, Representative Nunes, makes that kind of money? I don't know of anybody in my district that does. Representative Serpa, Senator Reptakis, you know anybody who makes $88,000 in your district?
May I ask a question? Do these numbers come from a census?
Yes, yep, and the packet, this is funding formula summary. This is basically the information that I pulled from RIDE's website that is the detail to the calculation, and I did pull the census and verify that the numbers that they were using are correct. So as far as the pieces used in the calculation, those I can agree with. It unfortunately has an extremely negative impact on Coventry.
Basically, by looking at what you had given us, I just went back, I found one of the bills I had put in 2008, it's S2397. If you want to take a look at that formula in that legislation and see if that's going to be enough to be sufficient for the issue that we're talking about. I was also maybe adding the numbers at the beginning of your packet. If Coventry had the same amount of numbers that you have at the beginning at 4,619 and I think 1362 was the RFPL, if it stays the same, then you can tie this bill in that says if the numbers are the same, then the state aid is the same. What I would do, next couple of weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, take a look at this bill. It's 2008 S2397. Look the way the bill is set up. If that's going to be enough calculation of the formula in the legislation to suffice what we're targeting. But I would also target, if the numbers are the same, being the population, and I would put aside the medium incomes, because those numbers are kind of high, then maybe if this is something we can use to determine to at least give you some sort of, I could say, you won't have any odds of thinking what the numbers are going to be coming up in March, but if it determines what the local school aid is going to be the coming year at a base minimum, maybe that's something that you can work from. So,
I will take a look at that, thank you.
you're welcome.
Mr. Lewis, a little tangential, but do you have a grasp on how many students have left the district for pathway programs in other districts versus how many have come? Is there a net loss, net gain, roughly?
Well, I don't know, we know that right now we have about, I'm gonna give an estimate of about, for next year, we'll probably have about 34 students that are in terms of career tech. So there's different buckets, like there's career tech, and basically the way the commissioner and the Department of Ed, they look at school choice when it comes to career tech. And they're supposed to be looking at some legislation. So if we have a program that we offer, that the intent was students would go to those regional centers where they have the program, but that's not the way the Department of Ed. So it's like charter schools, that if students, family wants to send a child to charter school, they have a right to go to the charter school. So we have about 40, right now we have about, I think projected for next year, about 42.
Leaving or coming in?
Coming in.
How many do you have leaving?
And we have about, I think it's about, what did I say, 32, 33 right now that most of them are going to one program. But we have some in Warwick, we have a couple in Narragansett, we have a couple in Cranston.
So if I'm understanding, you're
We have a
sending
net-
more Coventry native students out of your
No,
district?
we have more coming into our career tech than we
you-
do going out to career techs.
Okay.
However, that's career techs.
But,
Charter
okay, I'm talking
schools,
in general, not charters, I'm talking just other public schools. How many students are leaving the district versus how many are coming in for, again, the pathways and the other public school programs that allow them to voc tech, all of that?
I think we have a net, there's more students coming in
Okay.
than are leaving for career tech programs. So,
Does that, that sets up the next question, does that impact your budgeting in a negative way or a positive way? How does that help you to have more children coming in? Or
would help us to have all students coming in, most of our students staying with us, right? That's the way we're set up with the regional. I mean, that's the goal, is that we want to have, and that's what we talked about during the budget process. You know, we're not resting on our laurels, that we had one of these 7 regional career tech centers, and then, you know, back in the day, students in those catchment areas all went to those regional tech. We know that it's a very competitive market. We know that parents want the best for their child. We know that we have to compete. So we're looking at that, so that to make leaving Coventry a very, very difficult situation. Like, some students go to Hendricken or LaSalle, but it's like a legacy, you know, their parents went there. We want to make it very, very difficult, and we know we have some work to do. So, but I think, you know, we would like to draw in 100 students into our career tech and maybe have 20, 25 go out, you know? That's our goal to increase.
And would that ease your burden for budget?
Oh, definitely.
It would. Okay, so the money following the student has become a problem insofar as losing students.
Right, so, if I may just jump in, so, most of the districts that we're paying tuition out to can range from 16 to 20,000 depending
Yeah, their
on the
program,
school. Our per pupil is around that $16,000, but again, that takes into consideration fixed costs and whatnot. So if you lose one student, that per pupil is not gonna change a lot. So when you start thinking, again, I'm picking on one particular system because it's new.
Yes.
Yes.
We're familiar.
Yes, so when we budget to have 11 students attending that school district, and suddenly you find out that you have 23 going to the tune of $16,500 per student, that's a lot of money that's going out that we could use in our community.
And that's sort of where I was going, Sarah, and so
Right,
thank you for
exactly.
answering that succinctly, because I did see that as a potential problem. What would help alleviate that? And I'm not saying that you need to build up your programs, but with that aside, what would help in the budgeting process to alleviate the pain that schools? Because certainly Coventry is not the only system feeling the pain. Some are benefiting, some are losing, and the losers right now are hurting. So what would help? What could we do that would help?
I think working with RIDE in terms of, the commissioner has met with individual superintendents. He's met with just the regional career tech center superintendents. And as much as he wants school choice, he's also agreed that he would work with us in terms of if we offer a program, then students in that area, in that school district, would have to attend that program, not go to another school for the same program.
Yep.
And he's willing to work with us on language, but that hasn't taken place. That would be something that
That would be helpful.
that would be helpful. And again, that doesn't preclude the fact that we have to put out high-quality programs. We know that, we talk about that constantly, and we're looking at our programs.
Thank you.
If I may just jump in real quick,
Absolutely.
so the theory at that other district was always build a castle and they will come, and that's what we used to say. And so I think if we want to start tuitioning students in, but even more importantly, stop our students from leaving, then that investment in our system is what has to take place. And it's not, unfortunately, those are new programs. So we do have a list of new career tech programs that we will be discussing with the school committee, but those come at a cost. You have to have textbooks to start that. You have to have the equipment to start that. You have to have the professional development to start that. So if we want to be in a position where we can tuition kids in and keep our kids here, then we have to have the programs that make them want to stay and come. And that's going to take an investment in resources to do so.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on number 1? As far as we have tonight, I would like to acknowledge Representative Morgan. Welcome. Just arrived, so that's all, but Representative Roberts that could not attend. That's 7 out of 8. Thank you for coming. Merry Christmas, Representative Roberts. Merry Christmas. Morgan, did I say it? I meant Morgan. I know Roberts can't make it. Okay. Mrs. Morgan, yes, you're here. All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming. All right, Mr. Levinson, I guess we move down to number 2.
Yes.
I'll let you go ahead with that one.
So this is recommendations of the Rhode Island School Building Task Force. I know both the House and Senate have representatives. And one of the things in Coventry that is quite apparent if you go into our schools is our schools, most of our buildings are old. And we haven't had the resources to maintain. We have, our capital budget is predominantly for technology. I got in trouble the other day for mentioning ceiling tiles, so I'm going to refrain from mentioning that we have $800,000 worth of ceiling tiles that need to be replaced. But that's just to really make a point. I've never been in a community where ceiling tiles weren't replaced when they needed to be replaced. We were really struggling. You know, we just mentioned before in the last, you know, if we want people to be proud of the schools, I mean, we have incredible staff, I believe. You know, we were talking earlier, we've made a lot of really good hires. I think our school's definitely moving in a very positive direction. We haven't, you know, I need to hit some wood here, because there's been just positives about education. You know, there's a lot of negativity, and we've been in the news for positive. You know, obviously that can shift, but there's a lot of good things going on. But our schools are falling apart. I mean, we've been dealing, just today, we dealt with issues with our heating system, because they're old. We had coils burst in both Western Coventry, the steam pipes are just going. And when we patch something else, it goes another section. You know, we have schools that were built in 1962, in the 70s. I think our newest school is Washington Oak, which was built in 2000 and... 2000? Okay. So this is something that the state's been working on. I know the General Treasurer, Commissioner of Education, I know the House and Senate. They want to make a major investment. You know, we all talked about the Jacobs report that came out that said Coventry, just to get our infrastructure where it should be in terms of a high-quality, safe environment for our students, just with our current structures would be about 70, you know, somewhere between $70 to $76 million. So this is an aggressive plan to go out in bonds in 2018, I think, for $250 million, and 2022 for another $250 million. I know though, when I just mentioned even construction here, I get a lot of evil looks, you know, and the bond seems to be a bad, you know, word. But I'm looking for your thoughts as legislators around this whole process, what you feel. Like I said, we had about $100,000 in capital last year to use through impact fees, and we replaced a filtration system at Washington Oak, because if you went in and saw the bubblers or whatever, the water fountains, and I'm sorry, Western, they had trash bags over them. We were having water, and that had been in place. That problem had been in place for several years. So we used those funds to fix it. Anybody that goes to Hopkins Hill, you saw that sand dune issue that had been there for 20 some odd years. We didn't have any additional funds. We used money we didn't have to put a fence up with the help of Mr. McGee, thank you very much, in the Department of Public Works, and some private truckers to bring in some loan. You know, we put a fence up and we're gonna reseed it, but we have very little funds. So I just wanted your thought in terms of this process and where we are in terms of Coventry, and what your support or recommendations would be for us as a school department, but also as a school community.
Yes, Representative Morgan first.
So I have a couple of questions. Do you know what your school match is from the state? So what part comes from the municipal taxpayers, state?
So I think the reimbursement rate for us is about 47%, but if it's a green project, there's an additional 4%, so it could be up to 51% reimbursement.
So about half comes from municipal taxpayers and half from
Correct.
the state. And I guess for the town council, how much do you have bonded? How many, what's your bonding position?
I defer to Mr. Waters, Mr. Tebow.
Yep, it's a school general obligation, a non-school obligation.
So our current amount bonded right now is $3 million, according to our finance director.
In total? So I know you
So our
had
total,
some fairly large bond issues in the last few years. I just wonder, is that all paid off?
That number's not correct.
Not in the schools, just for the town, because the bonding comes from the town.
So we have a total bonding capacity of approximately $63 million total.
And do you know how much
Of
is
that,
being
that's
used?
being utilized right now, I want to say probably, I want to say 11 or 12 million, and Bob can verify that.
Just gonna go check?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just,
May I jump in real quick while he
Yes,
runs to check? So I just wanted to touch base regarding the reimbursement rate. In order for a school district to be eligible for the reimbursement rate, they have to complete the necessity for school construction application process, which came into effect around 2011. Coventry Schools has never completed that process. So as it stands right now, if we were to complete a project, we would not be eligible for that reimbursement. It's a 3-stage process. We did complete stage 1 and we're approved for that. Stage 2 is due February 1st, however, it is somewhat cost prohibitive for us to do that. In order to even get to that process, we have to hire an architect and an engineer to have them come through our entire school and assess the entire school, even if we only want to do improvements in one school. It's part of these regulations that came into place. We did go out to bid for an architect to do this feasibility study. All of their cost proposals are basically a % of cost, because not only do you have to have them come in and analyze your building facilities, but then they basically have to stay on through the entire project, which is a great idea if you're doing a major renovation or major school construction. You obviously want that oversight. But even for us to do regular maintenance upkeep, which would otherwise be housing age eligible, we would have to take on these additional costs. So that has been something we actually talked about the last school committee meeting, that we're grappling with the unanticipated out-of-district tuition costs that we're hit with this year. We had hoped to move forward with stage 2 and 3, but I'm having a hard time saying, yes, let's do that, because as of right now, I don't think that we have the funds in the FY18 budget to do that. So what that means is if we were to take on a project immediately, we would not get that 50% reimbursement until we complete that stage 3 process.
what's the stage 3?
I'm sorry, the three-stage process for the necessity for school construction application process.
Nice to know, thank you. Let's see what we can do about that.
Thank you.
May I add a comment, please? Saturday, Chairperson Patno and I attended a training program for school committee members, and it was specifically on the recommendations of the Rhode Island School Building Task Force. And the presenter was Ira Magaziner, treasurer for the state of, excuse me, I think about his father, forgive me, don't tell him. Mr. Magaziner, treasurer for the state of Rhode Island. And he specifically asked us to speak to our legislators and ask them to help support a bond issue being put on the ballot in 2018 to support school construction and school improvements. And so I'm asking you to consider that. I won't go into all the details that he presented, but he did present many attractive features that they are building into the program that would make it very attractive for us if we could find the money to even do the preliminary studies that we need to do. But it would be a good bond issue for all of the children in the entire state. So I would ask you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Waters, any update on the information?
Bob's going to get it, but I'd like to note that one of the items that the league is pushing for is the school aid funding. And as a result of the task force, they've determined that there's an estimated $2 billion shortfall in school construction renovation that the state needs to be aware of for bringing all their schools up to good condition. I'm not sure exactly what the $2 billion consists of, but that's a number that was put out there.
No.
Any other comments on, yes, Representative Nunes?
Thank you. I just want to, I guess, be clear on this. What your proposal is right now, what you're asking for legislative support on is a referendum for $250 million in 18 and $250 million in 20 or 22?
22, that's the recommendation from the task force. So, so if that is to go forward, the point here is that if we're to go forward, for 18, as Sarah said, we have a lot of work to do. But we're not even there yet. Like, we have to, decide, is this community going to support that? But as legislators for this community, as I was asking before, with the state is indicating that Coventry needs to contribute more to education, and the state share went from 48.7% to 45.9%. So, just would like to know where you stand on this in terms of your support. Are you going to support this legislation? Where do you stand on this? And maybe you haven't had conversations around the legislation or around the proposal.
$500 million is a little bit to digest, so it's something that, I probably need to think about a little bit.
Sure.
I would certainly be willing to maybe, look into some type of modification to the feasibility study, so at least we can look at this, intelligently and figure out what exactly you need to spend on what schools you need to spend them on. And maybe 250 million is enough, or maybe $500 million isn't enough, so it's definitely something we should look at.
And this is for the state, this isn't for Coventry.
But how much is for Coventry? That's the
Statewide.
question. How much is that
We
250?
don't know what the share
So-
is.
So the state did the report, remember the Jacobs
Right.
report? They went into every school district, they hired the Jacobs firm, and they came out for Coventry, and I shared that with the town council when it came out. And then it was a draft version for so many months. And then they came out and finalized it. And for us, it was approximately $76 million, right? But now, there were some points where they were gonna allow us to use that report as part of the feasibility study, but now they're not allowing. We can use it as some guidance, but now we have to go back out, even though the state spent, many millions of dollars to do that report. So I think that's where the $2 billion comes from, though, that the entire Jacobs report, when it looked at the school, because they walked every single school in the state. And I think that's where that number that Mr. Waters was referring to. So the proposed bond, the bond that they're proposing is for the state in 2 phases, 2 bonds of $250 million. So again, my question was, is that something that you support? We have a lot of work to do on our end, and that feasibility study right now is almost prohibitive because, just because of where we are financially in Coventry for FY18. So for us to invest potentially $40,000, $50,000 is a lot of money to invest just to get to the starting line.
Understood.
So Mr. Levis, from the moment that bond proposal came as a suggestion from the panel, my instinct is to be opposed to it, and I'll tell you why. And that may not be favorable, and maybe not be what people want to hear, but we've seen some stuff go through the legislature this year that has basically been bailout Providence legislation, from the sale of the reservoir properties, et cetera, et cetera. Providence is in deep trouble. You mentioned ceiling tiles. We can all sit here and we can understand the degradation to the quality of the schools and how that's happened. But you can't hold a candle to Providence that has lead paint chips big enough for a family to eat hanging off the wall, and lead pipes exposed and wires and everything else. I would imagine were this to be bonded, you'd see very little, if any, and what you saw would be insufficient, and you would find yourselves having to go out to the people of Coventry to bond the balance of maybe what was even promised to you. I don't see this as very good. I see this punishing towns that have been fiscally responsible and have maintained their schools very well, yet schools like, systems like Providence that refuse to even fund their pensions fully are going to get the full benefit. I don't think this is a good deal for the taxpayers whatsoever on a macro level. That's my position today. As we learn more, and you asked for our positions, that is my position. When we learn more, if that changes, I'll be happy to let the folks in Coventry know, but as it stands, there's no way I can support a $500 million bond referendum. That's basically a bailout Providence bond. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Representative Morgan.
I agree with my colleague. Representative Chippendale, but they're asking for $250 million over 5 years, which is really $50 million a year. You need 35 of that in the next 5 years, so you're not getting half of what, right? It just, have you gone through and prioritized your projects? One, health, safety of the children. I honestly believe that children and teachers deserve to be in healthy schools. But have you prioritized it? Because what you're talking about is $500 million over 10 years, and Coventry will get a tiny, tiny bit of that.
So we have no plans for major construction. So we put forward a capital plan with Mr. Waters as part of our budget last year. I think we did 5 years, approximately $800,000. We're looking just to take what we have and make those environments optimal learning environments. We're talking about schools, like I said, that were built in 1962 that were designed for learning in 1962. We're talking about and things that aren't even reimbursable. We're talking about like cafeteria tables. We have cafeteria tables in the high school that are original, that are dangerous. They're just dangerous. We had somebody hit in the head when they were moving them because the latch didn't work and received a concussion. We're talking about a lot of basic improvements. If we were to go out to look at building a new school, which we're not, that would be, we'd have to have, like with elementary, do a reconfiguration team and look at that for 2 or 3 years and what does this community want? We're not looking. We're looking to do projects that are probably under $500,000. At some point, maybe do a bond for our high school, because our high school is our flagship. Parts of it have been renovated, other parts of it are obsolete.
Well, and
So
I guess
those
that's
are
what I'm
things we're
asking,
looking at.
have you prioritized
Yes.
those projects so that we know
Right.
every year what you want to do?
So we just started.
You can't do them all at
Right.
once.
We started doing that last year, and we had lists, but it was kind of, the mindset was, well, we're not going to get the money, so why go forward? And I think we have to go forward. We have to let the community. I'm definitely not doom and gloom. I believe there's a possibility thinking we're going to figure this out collectively. But last year we did. We sat with the town. We honestly looked at our list. We took it off some of the Jacobs report, and we prioritized. And we put $800,000 for the next 5 years. And we could do that moving out every single year. And capital wasn't, I don't believe any capital was funded by the town. But year after year after year after year, and we have buildings where we've had 12 custodians and maintenance staff cut over the last 10 years. We can't even maintain what we have. And we want to guarantee when people come in, I'd much rather have, yes, our schools are old, but they're spotless. And we can't commit to that. We work hard. So we have to just be honest about where we're at. So, and I don't disagree with probably the urban areas getting the most of this money. But I think this has to be brought out to the public and say, look at what we have. And if the community decides that the condition of our schools and our municipal buildings, I'm so happy they just replaced the carpet over there. The community owns these. Look at here, this is a public building. If this is okay, then so be it, the public has spoken, So for us though, we need to do something drastic. Like I mentioned, just the heating systems. Our heating systems are gonna explode. We had to do an emergency repair for a pump house at Washington Oak. We are doing it because we had pinholes in our pump house. It's like a mile away that pushes the water to Washington Oak. And so we have a repair. It was $30,000, which we didn't budget, just to fabricate a portion of the pump, the pipes. And that's going to be replaced. They have to drain the whole system. And then we found out on top of that, if we turn that system on, it's all PVC piping going up. The Kent County Water said, you're going to blow all those pipes and then you're out of luck. So we had to now go out and get a pressure release, a company to come in that'll put some pressure release. We're just reacting to situations, and we do it low-key. We go before the committee, we let them know, but we're not doom and gloom. But at some point, our schools aren't going to be inhabitable. I look at like Hopkins Hill, which is an incredible school, with an incredible school community, but it's old, and it's to the point where we're not going to be able to maintain it to the standards we need to at some point. So we're in a, this is, this community, we're in a tough situation. So on the surface, this is very positive, because at least it's getting, under the spotlight in terms of the conditions of schools, just like the conditions of bridges, we know that, conditions of roads. But, so, for me, it's really interesting to see where do you stand on this? And I appreciate your honesty, and I don't disagree with that. But if that's the case, then what do we do? What do we do?
Do you have a list of the projects?
I don't have it on me, but I can definitely, I
Can you
have it
get
here.
them?
Sure.
So you think it's $800,000 a year is what you need?
This
or-
is just what we put out there. We have a lot, we could prioritize, well over $1 million a year. We could, because there hasn't been an investment in capital in, I don't know how many years. I don't know what the last, I know they did a bond for roofs, they did a bond for boilers.
Mhm.
But if you go into our schools, we have furniture, nobody has individual desks anymore. There are tables, it's about collaborative learning. We have rows and rows and rows and rows of desks in our schools. We had a school, Hopkins Hill, that took desks from Smithfield that were 1980s desks, and they were an upgrade. And when Hopkins Hill, Old County Road School in Smithfield, the only reason I know it, because I was there, and I had worked with Kathy Tankrell, the principal, they took a whole many classrooms worth of furniture, because it was an upgrade from what they had. And that was 1980, and that wasn't that long ago. Kathy's been here like 5 or 6 years. And again, this isn't doom and gloom, we just have to do something about that. So, our list was sitting with Mr. Waters and saying what's realistic, and, we put in, $800,000, but when you haven't received any money for capital, other than technology, $800,000 is like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? So, and we know you just don't go from from 0 to 60. We know we have to work with the community and work with the state on some type of plan, but the key word in that is a plan. There has to be a plan. No longer can we just say, well, we're not going to get the money, so why bring it forward? We just can't do that anymore.
Okay.
I was just going to say,
Final.
lastly, I think also the extension should go to the federal delegation also, to ask them what is the plans in Washington for any federal money coming back to the states. If you recall, those schools in Coventry from 1957 to 1963, I believe all the elementary schools, Black Rock, Hopkins Hill, Tioga, were all built with some federal money, starting in 57 all the way to 63. So it wasn't just the town or the state that built the elementary schools that we have today in the high school. Today, if we were to rebuild every single school in Coventry, it would cost about $250 million. $250 million for every single school to be replaced. But again,